Do you ever lay on your bed at night before going to sleep, staring at the ceiling, thinking about your day, and agonizing there, thinking, am I a good person? So, if you're anything like me, this has happened to you multiple times in your life. Maybe not necessarily exclusively in your bed before before going to sleep, but just like it is a question that comes up time and time again. Sometimes based on things you've done, things you may have said, or other times just on like what you've been thinking about or like things that you've considered or just some dark evil passing thought in your head and you start thinking, well, if I was a good person I wouldn't have these thoughts, right? Or I wouldn't have these instincts, or I wouldn't have said that. um and I guess, yeah, that's kind of what I want to about today, about this whole concept of being a good person and what it means and how in a sense, we've kind of almost like brainwashed ourselves out of being human a lot of the time and just like not accepting all these parts of ourselves because we like to think that those bad things, those bad ideas, those, bad thoughts, bad impulses, they belong to someone else, someone that is not us, right? Like we could never do that. We could never. But I think if you think back about your lives and just kind of what you do on the day to day and maybe actions that you're less proud of, possibly, you see that, sometimes in particular situations, those sides of us just come out, whether we want them to or not. Like, so we may try to be super virtuous, have all these values in place, and follow them as best as we can. But despite all of that, things just happen, right? Like bad situations arise. Sometimes situations come about that we don't really know how to handle, don't really know how to get a grasp on, or we've never faced, or we feel very unsafe in certain situations. And we can walk away from those situations having done something that feels out of our integrity, out of our sort of a sanctum of virtuosity. And yeah, it can bring about these sorts of questions. Yeah, am I a bad person? Have I been a bad person this whole time? And I think that's something that we often forget is the shadow. So this is yeah, something in psychology that people like Carl Jung talked about, how we all have a shadow side. And our shadow side is kind of like the parts of us that we don't want to face because, according to our own standards or our own ego, we see them as bad, see them as undesirable, as something other people do, but we do not do. And I think, it's in large part about control for a lot of us. So we want to feel like we're in control. We want to feel like every decision that we make, every word that we utter, everything that we do, how we interact with the world reflects positively towards us. Or at least, like, I think a lot of us do. We want to be good people, right? Good girls, good boys. We want to be seen in a flattering sort of light. We want people to observe us being kind and generous, and we want them to compliment us on what we've done. Give us a pat on the back, say, good job, you're great, you're such an awesome person, or whatever. We love that stuff. We love, and it feeds into this kind of desire. And also, I think it actually feeds into our own fears, strangely enough, because it's kind of like those reinforcements kind of reinforce that, oh, when we are good, when we do good things, we receive love and praise and acceptance from our peers, from the people in our lives. And then when we do bad things, we feel the repercussions of that, right? Maybe somebody's trust in us will be eroded, or it might lead to a difficult conversation later on, or just in more extreme situations, it might lead to a friendship ending or a relationship ending, or leaving a job or something, right? It can lead to other things, but I think so much of the time we're worried about being a bad person because of these little things that happen. And like I said, I think it is in part due to the sense of control we want to have over our lives. And we have this kind of like delusional thing where we think if I always do the good action, the action that according to my beliefs, to my values, is going to lead to a positive outcome, it will lead to a positive outcome. But that is not always the case, is it? Like there are times where we mean to do the right thing, we mean to do um, the good thing, and things just kind of get out of hand, right? Like it can be something as simple as, lying to somebody about how good their outfit looks and then them, uh, I don't know, meeting a very critical person who knows a lot about fashion and destroying their outfits or something. I don't know. I don't know if this kind of stuff happens in real life, but I'm just saying that even if you're like, oh, well, I believe kindness above all, kindness always has to come first. So even if, this is such a silly example, but yeah, even if that person's outfit is maybe not great, I will be kind and tell them that they look good. And then, there's other people who might believe that doing the good thing, the right thing would be to be honest. And they will look at that person and say, like, no, like that outfit, it just does not work. And you can see how on both sides there could be an outcome to that situation that can be quote unquote bad, right? Like the person might react really badly if you tell them the truth. They might get ridiculed, or their date might not go so well if they go in with the bad outfit, or the inappropriate outfit for the event that they're attending, right? They could feel really out of place. So, yeah, I think we think that by always being a good person, again, big quotation on all of the times I say that during this video, but we think by following these virtues, these values that we have for how we want to show up in the world, gives us a sense of control over the outcomes of what we do. And we think if I'm always doing the good thing, then, I will have a good impact on the world. But we are not. Like, I mean, some people might be, but most of us are not fortune tellers, right? We're not able to foresee, and even fortune tellers, if you've ever watched or gotten a tarot read or watched something, like it's always very vague. They never give you anything specific. So even if there are some people out there that have this ability, it remains a point of view within the context of this universe that is very, yeah, very complicated, right? There are so many moving parts in our world. First of all, there's just the amount of like different consciousnesses across the planet, right? Like when you think 8 billion different interconnected, consciousnesses trying to interact on a limited square footage on this great big blue planet. That is right away. Like you have to see how that means that it's like the odds would be almost unpredictable to predict based on like, yeah, accounting for every person's decisions, every person's words, every person's actions. Like there's just no way of knowing what will happen every time you can make a decision. So, we tend to beat ourselves up if we do something wrong, or if something slips, and we may show a side of ourselves that we are not necessarily wanting to show out there in the world. And then we go back and think, I'm a terrible person, I'm a bad person, I did something bad, 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 bad. And we can really beat ourselves up and kind of like, yeah, just what's not helpful there a lot of the time is that we end up putting the blame on these parts of ourselves that, if it came out, it is somewhere in you. It just is, it's likely that it's unconscious, and our unconscious mind and what goes on in there has such an impact on our lives, on our daily lives, on, every little thing that we do, what we attract, what we repulse, what we go towards, what we may move away from, like just again, like this kind of like, and yeah, like I think it is also like it affects our intuition and stuff like that. Like yeah, I mean, you see the cases of like these women who are dating these abusers, for example, and they're convinced that no, like they're going to change or they're going to be better and stuff, and it's kind of like there is something there that is unconscious, because if you just take things at face value, as an outsider, you would be like, get out of there. But them being in there, in the situation, and then you push in like all the unconscious things going on in the background that they might not be able to see clearly. And, you've got a recipe for continued abuse and stuff like that, for example. But yeah, I really think that that doing that kind of thing, like pushing away those parts of ourselves, those trying to deny that they even exist, can be so detrimental to our lives, because I think, there is a lot of, I mean, there's shadow work, right? It is like a thing that you can do. You can pursue and work on your shadow. And the thing about the shadow too is that like it is not something that you will ever get rid of. I don't think so, unless maybe you become like one of the one in a billion people who become enlightened, and even then I don't know. Like I can't say, because um yeah, it's just not like in the cards for me in this lifetime or whatever to become enlightened. However, it doesn't mean that I'm not curious about all this stuff, and in particular the shadow, because I think that it is one of those things that I tend to forget about. Like until I'm reminded, I tend to forget that everything that I see out there that I may not like is also a part of me, right? Like you are human, I am human. We are all capable of terrible acts and really like really great acts of greatness or kindness or whatever. Like we have it all within us. It is all a choice. Like it is a choice that we can make on a daily, yeah, on a daily basis. We get to make choices and we get to take action and decide how we show up in the world. But, and here's the catch about, if you completely deny those sides of yourself and you just kind of ignore your your shadow and all of those things you don't want to take a look at, essentially, is that they still come up in your life whether you want them to or not, right? They will still show up in moments where you're put in a very specific situation, for example, where you might not have a script for that, or you may not have sort of a rehearsed good person decision for that particular moment, and then something will come out, some words or action or something will come out of you, and you will be like, where did this come from? This isn't me, or something like that, right? Like you'll just be faced with kind of a moment of your shadow peeking out from beneath, right? I mean, I like to think of the kind of ourselves being the our consciousness being kind of like the tip of the iceberg, and then underneath, there's the depth, all the unseen, the stuff we don't see below the water line, right? So that's a tiny little thing, like what we think is our entire selves, our conscious self, is this tiny little thing poking out of the top, and then beneath is everything we don't see, everything we are not conscious of. And like I said, it's just because it's unconscious doesn't mean it's not going to come out. So, like an example, a great example of where these things come out is in dreams. Like, have you ever had a very terrible dream where you did something very terrible, right? You hurt somebody you love, or you killed somebody, or like, you just did this like heinous act that you woke up being like, I would never do that. What was that? Like, why is that part of me? Why is that inside of me? And you just want to like push it away and never talk about it again. And like you just don't want to deal with that dream. And that's an example of sort of your shadow self showing you these parts of yourself, showing you that you don't typically want to acknowledge, but that come up either way, because dreams just don't care what you want. I mean, they can. I think you can ask your dreams to answer questions that you have or whatnot. But, at the end of the day, every time I go to bed at night, I never know what I'm going to dream necessarily. I don't know what's going to come up. And I've had some very scary dreams and some dreams where I did do things that I was like, woke up being like, oh my gosh, that felt terrible. Like I experienced it and I didn't like it. Like I didn't like it at all. And I just like don't want to think about it. But I do think about it. Like those dreams tend to stick with me because they're so, in their own way, they're so powerful. So I don't know. I don't know if you've ever had dreams like that you just, yeah, you were just like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Or like, I would never do that. But yeah, I think that, I think if you actually like sit down and think about it and really reflect on your own thoughts and the things that come up. And I think we can all see that there are these shadow sides of ourselves, right? Where a thought pops up into your head and you're like, oh no, that's a bad thought. That's a bad thought. That goes in the bad pile. But I think what we need to start doing actually is taking those thoughts and not, like, I'm not saying if you have the thought of like murdering your cat because it pooped on your new pair of leather shoes. I think, like, I, I'm definitely not saying, like, go for it, like, embrace your shadow, kill your cat. Like, that is not what I'm saying. I think that what I'm trying to say is that actually, not to kind of chastise yourself for having that thought because you're not, you, like, as the conscious being, um, somewhat in control or like the self, right? As the self, you can kind of observe those thoughts. And I feel like the closer you get to your shadow side, and to the things that you want to deny about yourself, and the things that you don't want to face, and the things that you'd rather project onto others rather than face them within yourself. Yeah, I think the closer you get to them, the more you can start sort of working with them rather than completely rejecting them. You kind of work with them. So let me give you an example, okay? So, and this is still something that I struggle with, but in the past, so I was raised by parents where a lot of the time things were communicated through a passive aggressive way or a jokey kind of way, right? Like a message would be slipped in about my weight or how I looked through a joke, or um, or like if my parents were unhappy with me, it would be communicated through sort of this passive aggressive, like being angry but not telling me why they were angry, and me leaving to let it, like staying there, guessing at what it was exactly that I did that ticked them off. And I adopted the same sort of way of being in the world because I did not realize at the time, right? It was very unconscious that I did this, that I was very passive aggressive with people in my life. And yeah, like it would just kind of come out. Like I would just be angry about somebody not refilling the Brita water bottle. And instead of like, being like, hey, I would really like it if you would refill the Brita water because every time I see the bottle half empty, it makes me rage or something like, right? It like, I would instead, do something very passive aggressive, like grab it really loudly, sigh, put it in the sink, fill it up, like close the sink, put it back in the fridge without taking any water from myself. Like, like all these little things that I wanted people to pick up on or whatever. And I have to admit, like, this is still something that I struggle with sometimes. If I'm very, very tired or whatnot, I can still slip into this pattern of just not expressing myself and instead choosing this more, I would say, sort of shadow side, or like this side of myself I don't really like, because afterwards, after these moments, I would often feel bad about my own reaction, about my own like anger or discomfort or like whatever issue around what I was communicating passive aggressively. And yeah, and like obviously as a kid also I probably didn't like it because it feels very like shaky to not know like what was it that I did. And even if the other person thinks they're being clear about communicating that passive aggressively, it is not always clear, my friend. Like it is just not. Like so anyway, this is something that I started to recognize within myself. And at first I think I probably like this was a while ago, so I don't remember the details, but I think this is something that I kind of denied about myself, kind of like, no, I don't do this. I'm such a nice person. I'm so kind. I'm such a good person, whatever, whatever. And that just didn't fit into there. Like a good, kind person doesn't do passive aggressive things. Those two just don't go together. So it's just kind of like, I would just like stuff it down. Um, but eventually I kind of, I don't know if it was pointed out to me. Again, I don't remember the details. This was at least 10 years ago now. But yeah, I think eventually it did sort of occur to me that I was doing this thing and I could have kept pressing it down and pushing it down. But I decided to kind of start to notice it and to question it and be like, why is it? And then, that's when that sort of recognition of, oh, my parents did this too. And this is just like how we did things. We didn't communicate clearly. We just use these like subtle, like jabs and stabs to communicate how we were feeling rather than being upfront about it and risking sounding ridiculous. Like, right? Like some people might be like, why the heck are you getting upset over the Brita water? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know. It just like, I have this like lack mentality. And so I see the Brita water half empty and I just think, oh my gosh, I'm running out of water, even though the sink is right there. And it doesn't have to be rational. I don't think a lot of our subconscious stuff and our shadow is necessarily logical or, makes a whole ton of sense if you actually pick it apart. But I also think that's like why it's useful to start picking it apart because you can accept, like, two things can be true, right? Like, you can accept that it is ridiculous with your like conscious mind or whatever. And you can also accept that it brings about this reaction in you that may or may not be in your control. Like, and I think a lot of time it is not because to this day, when I see the Brita water, Brita water bottle like half empty, it like I just have this like reaction to it. Except that now I recognize that that is my own reaction. There's things that I've done around that, and this is just like such a again a very small example, but you can see how that can ripple out and become these bigger things in your life. And especially like in this case, again, it's such a small thing. I could just fix it by not having a burner water bottle or just there's different things I could do to like kind of push it out of the way. Although I don't think that again, I don't think that's the intent here. I think because what I was kind of getting to is that yes, eventually when I caught on to the fact that I was doing this passive aggressive thing, I was able to start recognizing it before it happened. And that took a while. Like before I recognized it before it happened, I recognized it when it was happening. So just being like, this is something that I do that I don't like about myself. Okay, well, again, I can keep pushing it down and keep letting it be a problem, and keep letting it be something that pops into my life that then makes me go lay in bed afterwards, stare at the ceiling, and think, I'm such a terrible person, you know? Okay, I can do that. I can keep doing that. But, it kind of sucks because a lot of the time it would lead to having fights with people that I love, feeling quite ridiculous about the point of the fight, too. And yeah, it just, in the end, all of the information was shared anyway. Like, why was I upset? Oh, well, this, this, this is this. And it's like, why didn't you just say that instead of like causing all this drama, right? So, yeah, first came just recognizing that this was something that I did, despite not liking it, just being like, okay, this is not something about myself that I like very much, but here it is. And then so every time it would happen, I'd be like, ah, I did it again, right? And I say every time, but let's be honest here, I'd maybe say at best maybe 50% of the time, if I was good, like if I'm being honest, like, or maybe 30% of the time, I don't know. Again, this was years ago, but I think what's important here is just that I started being able to recognize when that would happen. And then the next thing was trying to catch it, right? Kind of like before the words came out of my mouth or before the tension increased to this point where I blew up. Before whatever, was brewing became explosive and passive aggressive, I would try to recognize it and then not say the thing or like not do the thing and instead communicate it in a different way. Because I think that's the thing we have to remember about these like shadow sides of ourselves is that a lot of the time they are meant to calm some of our fears, some of our anxiety, right? Like we may have in the past as children, for example, tried to communicate things directly and been criticized for it or been punished for it, right? Like, so a lot of these shadow things are things that we pushed under the surface really, really early on, and you might not remember exactly why, your uh, your consciousness or your mind or whatever decided to do that. Like, why, why did it decide that this was the safer option for me than telling the truth, right? There is sort of a backstory to all of that, but that happened a very long time ago, right? You were a kid and there was so many things as a kid that you were not in control of. You were not in control of where you lived. You were not in control of who you lived with. If your mom remarried a grumpy, mean husband, you were not in control of whether or not you got to live with him. You were not in control of the food you ate, like maybe how often you went to the bathroom because you were at the mall that day and your parents were like, no, you've gone to pee twice already. It is like, you're not allowed to pee a third time. It's like, why? But you know what I mean? There are so many things that were out of our control. Our parents' behavior, our teachers, how we got treated, whether we moved around or not. And so we have to remember that a lot of these things that we've repressed, a lot of these things that we've pushed down and hidden from ourselves in a sense, like that was a long time ago. It was a really, really long time ago. And it was useful back then, but as you can see from my example, it was no longer useful for me in my day to day because I was, as a result, as I said, I was feeling bad about my actions. It was not who I wanted to be for the people around me. It was not like the example that I was able to recognize in my parents was not one that I remembered enjoying the sort of receiving end of, right? Like I didn't enjoy not knowing what was upsetting my parents. Like it's not fun. Like passive aggressiveness when you receive it is not good. Like it doesn't feel good. And so, yeah, I came to realize that this was something that may have served me at some point in my life, but was no longer serving me. And so I wanted to kind of like re-coach myself, retrain that particular story or belief or subconscious something that had this hold on me that said, you cannot tell people how you feel. You have to stuff it all down. And then like when you're really, really, really angry, then who cares, right? You can just explode and then you won't care in that moment or whatever. It's kind of like being drunk and all of a sudden like confessing to your crush, right? It's just kind of like, well, now you don't care. You're in this altered state of mind, and in that state of mind, you don't care about rejection. But the thing is, like, the next morning you wake up and you told your crush that you like them, and you have to deal with that, right? Kind of like I had to deal with the fact that I acted passive aggressively towards somebody that I care about, and that we fought, and that this person walked away feeling really terrible, and that really all of that could have been avoided by me just being more straightforward about how I was feeling. And so, yes. And so back to kind of my point of, yes, I don't think that the shadow or these sides of ourselves that we don't like, I don't think the sort of approach when it comes to them is to go lay down in your bed and think, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. I think it's about being like, okay, I did this thing. Let's face it. Like let's look at it like with my new adult eyes, right? Like let's take a look at this, figure out why it happened. What's the story behind it? And again, you don't necessarily have to remember exactly where it came from, but I think if you think long enough, you will be able to see either your own patterns with that thing or um, somebody else, like if somebody that was there in your childhood that had influence on you or whatnot, that may have shown you that this was how to handle those kinds of situations or whatever, right? But the point here is that I think by starting to interact with it and really like, um, yeah, trying to understand it and start recognizing it too, even if, like I said, it was not a part of myself that I was obviously very proud of. It was not how I meant to be showing up in the world, but it was happening either way. So I could stay in denial and keep it underwater, or I could try to bring it up to the surface and be like, okay, well, what can I do about this? And it was, let me tell you, it was a very slow process, as I think a lot of these things are. We don't just change overnight. But the way that I see change happening is through awareness. And this is something that I say all the time. So you'll probably hear me saying it multiple times in these videos. But I think the way we kind of instill change in our life is by bringing conscious attention to it. So I really think that by doing the hard work of recognizing when that was happening, despite me not liking it, again, very like, oh, I hate that thing about myself, but that was not helpful. What was helpful is looking at it, being like, I am doing this thing. How do I deal with it? Right? Like, how can I? And it was about starting to recognize all those little moments, like that flavor of like, oh, that is something that is going to come back later and bite me in my passive aggressive ass. Like, just, it's going to come back. I'm not going to be able to let this go. And to this day, like, this doesn't happen instantaneously. It's not like something happens and then I just know in that moment, oh my gosh, I'm going to be holding on to this for 2 weeks. Sometimes it happens like a few days later where I can't stop thinking about something that somebody did. And I can just tell that there's something about me that is clinging onto it. And then I have to do something about it, whether it's talk to the person about it or look within myself and figure out like, is this something that is within me, or with it like is what's the thing that I'm like kind of clinging on to? And a lot of the time I would say it is having to have a conversation, and they're not always easy conversations, but I do find that by letting it sit like that for, and again, not very long, and like I have my capacity for holding on to these things was like months. So, you know, decide your range. But for me, if I wake up the next day and it's still bothering me, typically that is when I will start considering bringing it up. And the nice thing about doing that though is that typically the next day I'm still thinking about it, but I'm not like as affected by it, and so I'm able to have much more productive conversations. And I say this like mostly with my sister, who's my roommate. If she does something and I'm still thinking about it a day or two later, I'm able to like approach her when I'm feeling good, when she's feeling good too. I'm not just going to attack her when she's down, but and I find that moment, that pocket of space, and I'm able to be like, all right, so I remember like 2 days ago, this is going to sound really silly, but you said this thing and it's been sticking, like it's stuck with me, or you did this thing, or whatever it happens to be, right? And I can have a productive conversation about that. And then it just kind of goes away, right? I'm not holding on to it for months and months and months in my little bottle of repression until the bottle explodes and there's spaghetti sauce all over the walls. And it feels so much better. And I have to say that, like, for the most part, like I said, I think that like shadow side, the passive aggressiveness, is still there. It is still active and reactive and all of that, but it's kind of like I have learned to communicate with it over the last 10 or so years to the point where it's kind of like it's not, like I said, it's not gone, it's still there, but it doesn't lead me to having these sort of unconscious reactions where I'm like, whoa, what was that, right? Um, if I'm able to catch it, which I usually am now, it can, yeah, it can be quickly dismantled or just kind of like cleared up within myself without it piling on. And that's so great. That's so great. And yeah, I don't know. That's just like something about shadow work. There you go. I've done some shadow work, and it's pretty cool. So I definitely think that it's worth looking into. And when you are asking yourself, am I a bad person? Like, try to pinpoint exactly what it is. Like, what is it that's making you question whether or not you're a good person? Like, what is it that happened? And then why did it happen? Try to like go back, like trace back the events, be like a little detective and try to find the path that led to the crime or whatever, right? That made you think that you're a terrible person or whatever. Um, yeah. And don't be like afraid of those thoughts either. Don't push them out or push them down because we are human and these things just kind of like occur to us and um we just get to, like, if you think about them and you really um yeah, spend time with them, almost like develop this relationship with them, you get to retrain, in a sense, your own shadow side and integrate it and be like, yes, I'm a passive aggressive person, but also I have learned to work with that and find ways to soothe that side so it doesn't get all irritated and snappy and angry and corrosive or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there. I don't know. I feel like I am kind of drifting off now, but hopefully this made sense and hopefully you're able to see something like that in yourself that you can start working on. And yeah, don't be like, I have to have this figured out like by tomorrow, by next month or something. It is an ongoing process. And if you feel comfortable, like you can even talk to people in your life about it and be like, hey, when you notice me doing this thing, could you like gently tell me, even if it's like, if you can't say it in the moment, because I look a little bit like I might not handle it, can you tell me later or something? Like, people can help you, right? As long as, again, it has to be a safe person. I would definitely not recommend doing this with an unsafe person. But if it's a safe person that you trust and that they have your best interest at heart, then they could be a good helper. But otherwise, I also know that it is work that you can do with yourself or with a therapist, of course. That can be super, super helpful in your life. So yeah, okay. Well, as always, if you've got any comments or whatever, feel free to leave them. You can follow for more if you want to hear more of my little rambles. And otherwise, I'll talk to you next time. All right, bye.